अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः. Prabhu, can you allow me to share the screen? So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 37, entitled The Killing of Demons Keshi and Vyoma, texts 15 to 20. So I'll do the Sanskrit first and then we'll read the translation. Chanuram mushtikam chaiva mallan anyamsha hastinam kamsam cha nihatam drakshye parashvo hanite vibho tasyanu shankhayavana muranam narakasya cha parijata paharanam indrasya cha parajayam udvaham veerakanyanam वीर्य शुल्कादिलक्षणं नृगस्य मोक्षणं शापाद द्वारकायां जगत्पते स्यमन्तकस्य च मणेर् आदानं सह भार्यया मृतपुत्रपदानं च ब्राह्मणस्य स्वधामतः पौण्ड्रकस्य वधं पश्चात् काशीपुर्याश्च दीपनं दन्तवक्रस्य निधनं चैद्यस्य च महाक्रतौ यानि चान्यानि वीर्याणि द्वारकाम् आवसन् भवान् कर्ता द्रक्ष्याम्यहं तानि गेयानि कविभिर्भुवि. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In just 2 days, O Almighty Lord, I will see the deaths of Chanura and Mushtika and other wrestlers, along with those of the elephant Kuvalaya Pida and King Kamsa, all by your hand. Then I will see you kill Kalayavana, Mura, Naraka, and the conch demon. And I will also see you steal the Parijat flower and defeat Indra. I will then see you marry many daughters of heroic kings after paying for them with your valor. Then, O Lord of the universe, in Dwaraka you will deliver King Ndiga from a curse and take for yourself the Syamantaka jewel together with another wife. You will bring back a Brahmana's dead son from the abode of your servant Yamraj, and thereafter you will kill Paundraka, burn down the city of Kashi, and slay Dantavakra. And you will also put an end to the king of Chedi during the great Rajasuya sacrifice. I shall see all these heroic pastimes along with many others you will perform during your residence in Dwaraka. These pastimes are glorified on this earth in the songs of the transcendental poets. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guraho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for joining today. I seek blessings from the senior Vaishnavas and all of you so that I can speak something in Guru Parampara in the mood of service and for the pleasure of all of you. So this is a very interesting verse, and we see this theme in Bhagavatam where things are predicted. Like for instance, even the Bhagavatam was written before Parikshit Maharaj actually was born, and or rather when the pastime of Parikshit Maharaj getting cursed, all that happened. So Bhagavatam was written before that. So Vyasadeva could foresee these pastimes happening. Similarly, Narad Muni, who is a dear servant of the Lord, is able to foresee the pastimes of the Lord. And when I read this, I was remembering Prabhupada also knew that there will be temples, there will be books, there will be so many other things that the prophecy of Lord Chaitanya is going to come true. So in to a man on a park bench, Prabhupada had said, there are temples and books, they are existing, they are there, but the time is separating us from them. So Prabhupada knew that this pastime of Lord Chaitanya, where the holy name will go to every town and village and to every soul, is going to happen. He had that faith, and time was separating. And we know when the separation of time went away, what wonders were created. So these specific individual pastimes we will be covering when the sections come anyway. So I thought, why not discuss the person Bhagavat today, whose appearance day it is. That is Srila Jiva Goswami. So Srila Jiva Goswami is known as our Siddhanta Acharya. Actually, let me just quickly bring up. Is it? Okay. Okay. So, yep. So Srila Jiva Goswami is known as the Siddhanta Acharya. And he, because of his contribution towards giving the Gaudiya Sampradaya an intellectual basis, and we'll see how that is. And so when Mahaprabhu was on the planet, he gave many instructions to many of his illustrious disciples, and we read about all of them in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, and so on. But as far as composing things go, Mahaprabhu did not really compose much. We know that he composed those 8 verses of Shikshashtakam. But apart from that, we don't know of him composing anything as such, like books or anything. So when Mahaprabhu left the world, there was a need for giving this sampradaya of Lord Chaitanya an intellectual basis, a Vedic scriptural basis. And this task actually was given to the 6 Goswamis by Mahaprabhu himself when he was on the planet. And arguably, the most scholarly and prolific amongst the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan is Srila Jiva Goswami. And his Swarupa, actually, he's Vilas Manjari in Golok Vrindavan. And he appeared in this world as Srila Jiva Goswami. So we'll first discuss the life of Srila Jiva Goswami a little bit, and then we'll go into his contributions. So here are some quotes by Prabhupada. The Vaishnavas are by far the greatest philosophers in the world, and the greatest among them was Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu. And Srila Jiva Goswami, the nephew of Rupa Goswami, the learned circle still in Bengal, they say such a big scholar in philosophy, there was none. And nobody expects a similar philosopher and learned scholar in the future. He was such a big personality, Jiva Goswami. Big Mayavadis, they were afraid of Jiva Goswami's logic and argument to establish the Vaishnava philosophy. And here he writes in a letter in 66, my mission is to develop to the glories of Srila Jiva Goswami all over the world. And I think you should cooperate with my honest endeavor. So I remember the path of bhakti, people would ask me, all this is good, you're reading Bhagavad Gita, all that is nice, but why dance? Why dance like crazy people? Are you guys crazy? And things like that. So there is this whole notion that this path of bhakti, path of Krishna consciousness, does not have an intellectual basis. But when we look at the life of Srila Jiva Goswami, we understand that that is actually that is not true, even to a slightest extent. There is complete intellectual basis to it, and it's just that we don't focus on it much because there is no need to focus on it as such. But those who are intellectually inclined can definitely do so. So that is Srila Jiva Goswami's contribution. So when I read the life of Srila Jiva Goswami, I got so much faith. My faith kind of renewed in this path of Krishna consciousness, in Lord Chaitanya, in what Srila Prabhupada has given us. So let's get into the life of Jiva Goswami. So we all know that he's one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and his father was Vallabha, who was later renamed as Anupam by Lord Chaitanya, and his uncles were the illustrious Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. And we know that when Mahaprabhu at one point was on his way to Vrindavan, he mysteriously took a detour to go to Ramakeli. Ramakeli is where Rupa and Sanatan Goswami and Vallabha, Jiva's father, they were posted as ministers, and Mahaprabhu wanted to meet them. So he took a detour via Ramakeli to go to Vrindavan. And in Ramakeli, in the dead of the night, there was a secret meeting between Lord Chaitanya and Rup, Sanatan and Vallabha. And that's a very nice exchange mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where all 3 of the brothers, they go to Lord Chaitanya with straw in their teeth, and they beg Lord Chaitanya for his mercy, and Lord Chaitanya is showering his mercy upon these 3 brothers. And while all this is happening, Jiva, who was a little boy, maybe not more than 5 years old, maybe just a few years old, he's watching all this. He's watching all these exchanges, and this witnessing the form of Lord Chaitanya, the divine golden form of Lord Chaitanya, has a very profound effect on him. And at the same time, seeing his parents, seeing his father and his uncles surrender their lives unto Lord Chaitanya also had a very profound effect on him. So right from his childhood, he was disinterested in any frivolous activities that children often engage in. And he would always, so he would make these little deities of Krishna Balaram, and he would worship them. He would cook for them. He would make garlands. I see Adi Purush Prabhu making garlands here. So he would dress them, he would sing for them, and he would do so many things that in order to serve them. And one day it so happens that he is unable to fall asleep due to separation. So he's just crying out, my dear Krishna, my dear Balaram, my dear Lord Chaitanya, Nityananda Prabhu, and just crying out their names. And then he finally falls asleep. And then he has a dream where his deities of Krishna Balaram, they actually get transformed into Gaur Nitai. And then he has very nice loving exchanges with him in that dream. And then when he wakes up, he is determined to go to Navadvip. And he wanted to go to Navadvip and meet Lord Nityananda. And so he does. He makes an excuse. I don't exactly remember what excuse he makes, because his mother doesn't want him to become a renunciate, which is the case with all parents, I believe. So he makes some kind of excuse, and he says, I want to go to some place to meet family and whatnot. And then with that pretext, he goes to Navadvip. And in Navadvip, he's greeted by Lord Nityananda Prabhu. So Nityananda Prabhu not only greets him, showers his mercy upon him, but he takes him around Mayapur, the 9 islands of Navadvip. And that is the Navadvip Dham Parikrama that devotees still do today, following in their footsteps. So Nityanand Prabhu, took him to Srivas Angan, where he actually met Srivas Thakur. So many of the associates of Lord Chaitanya, they were still alive that time. So he went to Srivas Angan, he met Srivas Thakur there. Then Nityanand Prabhu took him to Jagannath Mishra's home, where he met Sachi Mata and Vishnu Priya. And they actually cooked and fed him prasadam, and they showered their mercy upon him. Then their servant, so Sachi Mata's servant Vamsivadan, then took them to the temple of Jagannath Mishra, where Jagannath Mishra used to worship their family deity of Narayan. And actually, it was during this parikrama that Nityanand Prabhu foretold the rising of a great temple, Adbhuta Mandir, in Navadvip. And that is what devotees are trying to fulfill today through the TOVP, Temple of Vedic Planetarium. So in this way, this Navadvip Dham Parikrama, which has been detailed in one of the books of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is a very important event that took place, and devotees still follow in the footsteps of Nityanand Prabhu and Jiva Goswami in doing this parikrama. So that was in Navadvip. And then Lord Nityananda told Jiva Goswami that he instructed him to go to Vrindavan and join his uncles. So he said that Vrindavan is your family place, kind of a thing, because his uncles were there. So he instructed Jiva Goswami to go to Vrindavan. But on the way, he told him to go to Varanasi or Banaras. And there he should locate Madhusudan Vachaspati. So Madhusudan Vachaspati was an important disciple of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And so Nityanand Prabhu told Jiva Goswami to go to Madhusudan Vachaspati and learn Vedanta from him. And so that's what Jiva Goswami did. So he went to Varanasi and he studied under Madhusudan Vachaspati. And instantly he became so famous in Varanasi that, big scholars, when they would write something, they would actually consult Jiva Goswami to validate their works in terms of grammar, in terms of philosophy, etc. So he quickly gained a lot of expertise in the 6 systems of Vedic philosophy, and he became very expert in them. And after a few years in Varanasi, Jiva Goswami went to Vrindavan. He remembered the instruction of our Nityanand Prabhu that he had to go to Vrindavan to join his uncles. So he was merely 20 years old when he reached Vrindavan, with all the arsenal that he had of the Vedantic studies that he did in Varanasi. And now imagine, he had such a lot of reputation in Varanasi as a scholar, and then he comes to Vrindavan, and one of the first services which he receives is to perform menial services to Rupa Goswami. So Jiva Goswami first approached for initiation to Sanatan Goswami, but Sanatan Goswami, out of his humility, he said, you should take initiation from my brother Rupa. And therefore he went to Rupa for initiation.
Jagannath Gopal Prabhu, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I don't think you could see our messages in the chat. The screen share isn't working, so we just see a black screen. Perhaps you could just put it on you while you're telling us the pastimes. I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no worries at all. That's good to know. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah. Where were we? Yeah. So he went to Vrindavan, and Rupa Goswami, before initiating Jiva Goswami, he wanted to test him. He wanted to test Jiva Goswami for his humility, and that's the reason. Yeah, sorry?
Text him.
Test him. Yeah. So, then Rupa Goswami engaged him in many menial services like begging for alms and preparing the palm leaves and the pen on which Rupa Goswami would write his texts, and massaging Rupa Goswami's feet and so on. So, and finally, Jiva received initiation from Rupa Goswami. So many interesting pastimes happened during this time. I'll just share a few of them, maybe one. So there was this great scholar called Rupa Narayan, and this Rupa Narayan was a materialistic scholar, and he was going around India defeating scholars. And apparently his method was that he would defeat scholars and he would demand a Vijaya Patrika, or a certificate of victory, that I defeated this and this person, and that person would have to sign on it. And so he heard from many people that in all of northern India Rupa and Sanatan Goswami are foremost of scholars. So he thought, it will be a nice thing for his resume to defeat these two brothers. So he went to Vrindavan and he approached Rup Sanatan, asking them to debate with him. But then Rup Sanatan, they were engaged in the service of the Lord. They thought this is just a waste of time to engage with this mundane scholar. So they said, "Oh, you are such a great scholar. We are just simple devotees. What can we argue with you? We already accept defeat." Then this Rupanarayan becomes happy. So he asked, "Okay, will you sign this, certificate of victory?" They said, yeah, please. Then they sign it, and then off he went. And then he also heard, though, that there is this young Jiva who is gaining as much prominence as his uncles. So he should probably defeat him as well. So the task would be complete, foolproof. And then he approaches Jiva Goswami. He shows him the certificate of victory that was signed by his uncles Rupa and Sanatan. And then looking at that, Jiva Goswami becomes incensed. He becomes angry. How can you, blaspheme and reduce my gurus in such a way? And then he was asked whether he wants to debate with this, and then he agreed. Jiva Goswami agreed that yes, I'll debate. And for 7 days, they debated on the banks of Yamuna. And clearly, Jiva Goswami won the debate. And then Rupa Narayan fled from Vrindavan out of shame. And Jiva Goswami was very jubilant because he had done this as a service. And then he went to his guru Rupa Goswami to tell about this victory. And then as soon as he tells that, Rupa Goswami becomes disappointed. He becomes angry. He says that you're overcome by anger very easily. And those who do not have control on their emotions, and we know that Vachavegam, Manasa, Krodhavegam, and things like that in Upadeshamrit, nectar of instruction. So they are not qualified to live in Vrindavan. So he kind of tells Jiva Goswami to go out of Vrindavan. And then Jiva Goswami goes outside the village of Vrindavan in Mathura, and he's performing severe austerities there. Not eating much, just crying, just chanting the holy names out of repentance and things like that. And Sanatan Goswami comes to know about this Babaji who is performing such austerities. The locals tell him. And then Sanatan Goswami reaches there and he finds that Jiva is the Babaji who they are talking about. And then Jiva Goswami tells Sanatan Goswami what all happened and why he's here in this state. And Sanatan Goswami says, "Okay, no worries. I'll talk to my brother." So so this is very interesting. So he goes to Rupa Goswami and then he says, "My dear brother, you've been kind of not following one of the cardinal principles taught by our master, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." And then Rupa Goswami is thinking, okay, what could it be? Then Sanatan Goswami says, "Okay, you start listing what our master has taught us, and I'll tell you when you reach the principle that you're not following." And then he says, okay, the main principles that Mahaprabhu taught were Namaruchi, taste for holy names, then Vaishnav Seva, service to the Vaishnavas, and Jiva Daya. Jiva Daya is compassion to the living entities. But here there was a pun intended by Sanatan Goswami because Jiva also indicated Jiva Goswami. So Jiva Doya, compassion upon Jiva, compassion upon Jiva Goswami is what. And then when Sanatan Goswami nodded, Rupa Goswami realized, and then he brought back Jiva Goswami and nursed him back to health and reinstated him. So this way, this pastime happened. And some people say that, Jiva Goswami was overcome by anger when he did this. But in the connection of this pastime, Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrit in Adi Leela 10th chapter 85th verse in the purport that so he quotes Trinadapi Shunichena verse, and then in such a state of mind which is humbler than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others and expecting none in return. In this state of mind, one can constantly chant the holy names. And then Prabhupada writes here, nevertheless, one should follow the example given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya says in his Shikshashtaka, Trinadapi Shunichena Tarorapi Saishuna Amanina Manarena Kirtaniya Sadahari. Nevertheless, when the Lord was informed that Nityanand Prabhu was injured by Jagai and Madhai, he immediately went to the spot, angry like fire, wanting to kill them. Thus, Lord Chaitanya has explained his verse by the example of his own behavior. One should tolerate insults against oneself, but when there is blasphemy committed against superiors, such as other Vaishnavas, one should be neither humble nor meek. One must take proper steps to counteract such blasphemy. This is the duty of a servant of a Guru and Vaishnavas. Anyone who understands the principle of eternal servitude to the Guru and Vaishnavas will appreciate the action of Sri Jiva Goswami in connection with the so-called scholar's victory over his gurus, Srila Rupa and Srila Sanatana Goswami. So in this way, it is said that Rupa Goswami also was not rash in the sense of, just punishing Jiva for protecting the dignity of the Gaudiya Sampradaya of himself. But Rupa Goswami wanted to spread the glories of Jiva Goswami, because despite being such a scholar, despite defeating Digvijay Pandit, that's what this scholar was called, conqueror of all directions, despite being defeated despite defeating such a big scholar, Jiva Goswami was humble enough to follow the instruction of Rupa and leave Vrindavan. So that is the glory that Rupa Goswami wanted to spread about Jiva. And so this way, we understand that what real humility is. When Vaishnavas and our Guru is blasphemed, we should not keep quiet. We should at least try to, if we have the ability, we should try to refute them. If we do not have the ability, then better walk out from there. At least that blasphemy shouldn't enter the ears. So that is the lesson that we learn. And then skipping, a few more incidents. Then after Rupa and Sanatan depart from the world, Jiva Goswami becomes like the unanimous Sampradaya Acharya, the main, head of the Acharya. And he achieves many things in his life, and that's what we'll see here. So we'll see this in 4 parts, and all this material I've tried to gather from Radhikaraman Prabhu's lectures. We all know Radhikaraman Prabhu. He's a professor, and his thesis was actually on the work of Jiva Goswami. Then I went through Satyaraj Prabhu's book, The 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Then a couple of BTG articles and lectures. And so we will look at Jiva Goswami's contributions in these 4 aspects. So a great scholar. So Jiva Goswami wrote a total of around 25 books, which total to 400,000 Sanskrit verses. So in his lifetime he wrote, and his books can be divided into 4 categories. First is the philosophical works, of which the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami are like the main contribution that he gave to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, his 6 Sandarbhas. And that is one of the philosophical works. Then he wrote many commentaries. For example, he wrote the Durgama Sangamani commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which was written by his guru. And then he also wrote a commentary on his own Sandarbhas, which is known as the Sarva Samvadini. And it is, we always hear about Achintya Bheda Bhed. That's the philosophical system that Gaudiya Vaishnavas follow. And this term Achintya Bheda Bhed was first coined by Jiva Goswami in his Sarva Samvadini commentary to the Shat Sandarbhas. And then he wrote some literary works like Gopal Champu. We often quote from Gopal Champu certain subtle aspects of Krishna Leela that happen. And then he also wrote manuals for vidhis and rituals, and the most important one out of them is Harinamamrita Vyakaran. So Harinamamrita Vyakaran is so Harinamamrita means Vyakaran is grammar, and Harinamamrita means grammar which is connected to the holy names of the Lord. So this is the grammar that Lord Chaitanya used to teach in his school when he was Nimai Pandit, because he was in that ecstasy. So he taught Sanskrit in the form of the holy names, everything in connection with the Lord, all rules and regulations of Sanskrit in connection with the Lord. So one very nice example of this is we have consonants and vowels in any language. So Jiva Goswami wrote that the consonants are like Vishnu Jana. okay, Vishnu Jana, and the vowels are like Vishnu. So why is that? Now, if you take a consonant, for example, if you take the consonant K or K, of course, we pronounce it as K, but the sound of K without a vowel would be something like you can't really pronounce it. So a consonant doesn't really have an independent existence, independent from a vowel. You have to have a vowel in front of a consonant in order to pronounce it. So similarly, just like a consonant, which is Vishnujan, are always dependent on Vishnu, that is the vowels. So in this way, he made many such interesting things, which even through this so-called Harinama, Vyakaran, grammar of Sanskrit, he brought out the Siddhanta of Vaishnavism. And yeah, in the world today, there exist only two exhaustive manuals through which one can learn Sanskrit. One is Panini. Panini was another thinker who wrote a Sanskrit manual, and the other is, of course, our Jiva Goswami. So, and he was such a great scholar that there is a university in India called Banaras Hindu University. So they have a whole department dedicated to studying the works of Jiva Goswami. So very highly respected scholar. And you can imagine he had 6 sandarbhas. Out of that, one is Paramatma Sandarbha. And Paramatma Sandarbha itself has 109 chapters. And out of that, one chapter, a part of one chapter, is what got Radhika Raman Prabhu a PhD at Oxford. So you can imagine the scholarship of this great soul. So, and yes, so that's a great scholar. And there is so much that can be spoken about his scholarship itself. But then, yeah, I had a picture of the handwriting of Jiva Goswami, but that's okay. We'll look it up later. And then a great teacher. He was a great teacher. He was a Shiksha Guru of Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Acharya, and Shamanand Pandit. So we know that their Diksha Gurus actually instructed them to take lessons from Jiva Goswami in the Tattva, in the principles of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And they did so. And even Baladev Vidyabhushan, it is said, so Baladev Vidyabhushan was another Acharya who came 2-3 generations after Jiva Goswami. So Baladev Vidyabhushan was a great scholar, and he's known to have written the Govinda Bhashya. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita as it is, Prabhupada dedicates the Bhagavad Gita as it is to Baladev Vidyabhushan, who wrote Govinda Bhashya, the commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So Baladev Vidyabhushan was initially initiated into Madhva Sampradaya. But then when he came across the teachings of Lord Chaitanya through one Radha Raman Dev Goswami in Orissa, under his guidance, he studied the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. And that's when he got inspired to join the movement of Lord Chaitanya. So in this way, Jiva Goswami was a great teacher. And moving ahead, he was a great manager as well. So this is this is worth noting, because being a devotee doesn't mean we have to be transcendental and kind of not care about this worldly things. That's the example that Jiva Goswami sets here. So he had very good relations with the administrative class, and he through his well-wishers in the government, he actually got the Radha Damodar temple constructed. He got the Radha Govinda Dev temple constructed. And Emperor Akbar, who we all know, was a great admirer of Jiva Goswami. He even met Jiva Goswami, and he donated paper for his writing and so on. So, and Jiva Goswami, actually, he was very instrumental in making sure that the properties that belong to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, they stay with Gaudiya Vaishnavism for the time to come. So he purchased the land around Seva Kunj in Vrindavan, near where the Radha Damodar temple is today. And he made a deed that all the great Vaishnavas that time signed. And what was the price of that land that time? It was 30 rupees. So 30 rupees that time. Of course, that time it was a big amount, but that the deed actually still exists. The document of ownership still exists at Vrindavan Research Institute. And Jiva Goswami also used the legal instrument of will. We all talk about will and trust today. So how the property should go to our descendants. So Jiva Goswami used this instrument of will probably for the first time in history. So for the first time in history, he made a will which made sure that all these things remain with Gaudiya Vaishnavism for the time to come. And in this way, he was a great manager. He had many good relations with the administrative class. And then finally, he was a great leader. So book distribution actually was started in our Sampradaya through him. So he trained his disciples, Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivas Acharya, and Shamanand Pandit, to he gave all the books of Rupa and Sanatan to them, and he sent them to Orissa, Bengal, to distribute these books and to spread Gaudiya Vaishnava literature there. And one of the kings there, actually, in Manipur is a state in eastern India. So one of the kings there, he became a devotee of Mahaprabhu after he came in contact with Narottam Das Thakur. And he turned his entire kingdom into a Vaishnava state. And he arranged for devotees from Bengal to come and train their citizens in the Vaishnava culture. And that culture is still prevalent today. And the way they dance, the way they sing, their cooking and dressing, it retains a very pristine Vaishnava culture even today. So that was the great contribution of Narottam Das Thakur, who was the disciple of Jiva Goswami. And he advised Janava Mata, the wife of Lord Nityananda, on many matters. And he compiled the first library of Gaudiya Vaishnava literature. And despite doing all this, he maintained his humility. He would arrange prasadam and accommodation for anyone who would visit Vrindavan, and in that way serve them. So Jiva Goswami's life actually is a great testament to this quality of humility despite scholarship. So it's not that if one is a scholar, if one is a great person, humility can't exist. Humility can exist, and to such a great degree as well. And we see these qualities of being a great leader, a great manager, a great scholar, and a great teacher in Prabhupada as well. And Prabhupada is the one who gave us these teachings of Jiva Goswami in a very distilled manner so that we can benefit from it. So this is what I had about Jiva Goswami. And to get into the philosophical aspects of his writings is too complex. I would say I just know like maybe 0.01% of it. And the way he would write is, if he had to quote from some Acharya, he would just write the starting line and the ending line of that commentary, of that Acharya's commentary, and assume that you know it. So you can imagine the level of education that a person reading his texts needs to have. So today, at least, apart from very, very rare souls in South India, there is nobody who can actually read his Sandarbhas and completely understand them. So we can take parts and we can analyze them, but the depth that is there in all his works is amazing. So we are very grateful to Srila Jiva Goswami for giving us this intellectual basis of Krishna consciousness. So if anyone has any iota of doubt whether this philosophy makes sense intellectually, then you can remove it completely, because we had such acharyas like Jiva Goswami. So we pray to Jiva Goswami that we can take his example and continue serving in this mission. So Hare Krishna. I left 5 minutes for questions, but Prabhuji, you want to add something?
Hey, Hare Krishna. We don't actually have something to add. We're reflecting things you mentioned, praying to Srila Prabhupada that we say what he wants to say. You mentioned how Jiva Goswami was chastised for argument, for discussion, for defeating the mundane scholar. And you mentioned how Lord Chaitanya came to severely chastise Jagaya Madai. And Lord Nityananda said, well, actually, even though there are many, many people, everyone engaged in devious activity, you would have to kill everyone. So in this time, we're not exactly interested in killing anything except the demoniac mentality. Lord Ram slaughtered Ravana, but Lord Chaitanya, he wants Ravana to become a devotee. So that's the task at hand, and that's the method that's recommended, that we've been asked to not just go out and with the sword, but with prasadam. Prabhupada said the glove jamin is our weapon. Give them prasadam, show them love and compassion, and seduce them. Our intention is not to slaughter them, but to help them and to care for them. And so it's like an interesting, different strategy. We are, instruments of Rupa, Sanatana Goswami, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That is our sampradaya, that is our mood. And that's what we've been asked to do. And we might become extremely angry and contentious at all these ridiculous, evil people. But Jesus said something. He said, love the sinner, hate the sin. So there's that distinction there. And that's what we've had experience going out, collecting donations, 11 years in this country, traveling from state to state, from town to town, village to village, to events, to baseball games, football games, dog shows and dog races, and every imaginable place where people gather. And Lord Chaitanya, not by Srila Prabhupada's grace, has shown us how to approach these people with humor and with and appeal to them and engage them effectively. It's actually possible. We heard it, and then we tried, and then we saw that the miracle of devotional service is going out. And it says, don't fight the darkness. You can't drive away a shadow with a baseball bat. Light a candle. Right? Anyway, just trying to repeat Srila Prabhupada. Maybe I'm taking up too much time in our precious 5 minutes. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Let me see. The comments, any questions in the comments? Okay, there are no questions, but it's almost 8. So should we discuss questions if there are any after the darshan, or how do we do it? Okay.
Jeffrey Prabhu has a question.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for this lesson about Jiva Goswami. The point you made about his description of the alphabet and the consonants and vowels, and are there other examples of seeing the energy and the energetic in the mundane reality that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah, so there is one other example. This is also very interesting that I heard yesterday. So we have genders, right, in any language, masculine, feminine, and neuter gender. So Jiva Goswami wrote in Harinamamrita Vyakaran that the female gender, he called it Lakshmi. The male gender, he called it Narayan. And then he said, and do you know what he called the neuter gender as? He called it Brahman. And through this, he wanted to bring about the point that if somebody is worshipping the Brahman as the highest, aspect of absolute truth, they're actually divesting the absolute truth of all the attributes that the absolute truth has, that which do not happen when in Lakshmi, in the case of Lakshmi Narayan. So in this way, he brought out Siddhanta in that as well. So I know these 2 examples for sure. Yeah. I'll just put it near the altar so we can have darshan. Are there any other questions? Maybe we have some time.
Prabhu, I was thinking. I did not have any. I was an ordinary child, and do I have any chance in bhakti? I was doing all kinds of things as a youth, as an adult, even still doing. What's my chance?
I'll just say one sentence now and then we'll discuss more. But yeah, I'll just say भगवान की Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Sorry for the interruption. They blew the conch shell. So,
Jeffrey said you were saved by the bell.
your sorry.
Hey, Jagannath Gopal Prabhu, it's a little slow. Maybe it's just me.
Oh, no. Yeah, my internet connection was unstable. Is it better now?
It's getting better as you're moving towards the Lord, closer to Krishna. Makes your connection better.
That's an absolute truth that you just spoke. So when you asked the question, it reminded me of that verse from the song Gurudev Kripa Bindu Diya. So in the last stanza of that song, it says, Yogyata vichare kichu nahi pai, tomara karuna sara. So if you ask me my own qualification, I don't have anything. Kichu nahi pai, tomara karuna sara. I am made of your mercy, dear Gurudev. So that is what is the truth. We might have certain abilities that are given to us, but eventually it's the mercy that will take us. So Daiviya Esha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya. Mamevaya Prapadyante Maya Metam Tarantite. So Krishna says in the Gita that only by surrendering unto me can one cross over this ocean of material nature. So yeah, whether we have or we don't have, it's the mercy that will finally take us. And there in the Shastras, the Brahmana in South India, he didn't know any Sanskrit. He was reading Bhagavad Gita in a very broken manner, but then he was having tears in his eyes. And when Mahaprabhu asked him, hey, you're reading everything wrong. How come you have tears in your eyes? All your peers are laughing at you. That time that Brahmana said that, no, my guru told me to read the Bhagavad Gita and I'm just following his instructions. And by getting this vision of the form of Krishna becoming a servant of his servant, Arjuna, that is bringing tears in my eyes. So what was the qualification of that Brahmana? He didn't even know Sanskrit, but he was having ecstasy. So that is the mercy of Guru actually is what will take us. So yeah, that's what I feel.
Thank you, Gopal Prabhu. Thank you. Wonderfully answered question. Yeah, it's true. It's not about us. Thank you for bringing the point back home. It's not about us. We may be small, unqualified, disqualified, but our gurus, our Sangha, the scripture, Srila Prabhupada, the saints, so that they're our saving grace. Jagannath Gopal Prabhu. Okay, we can take one more question for this afterglow session. Bhima Prabhu, are you still a fox? You morphed into a horse. And a wonderful example of humility coupled with knowledge. Bhim, where are you? Okay. All right. So with this, we're going to wrap it up. Jagannath Gopal Prabhu, thank you. Wonderful class, very enriching. Thank you. I'm going to listen now.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful day, everybody. Hare Krishna. Bye-bye.